It's a quiet Thursday afternoon in the historic heart of Utrecht in the Netherlands. And then, out of nowhere, a massive blast just shatters the peace, kicking off a huge fire and leaving nothing but chaos behind. So, what happened? What could cause an explosion so powerful it literally shook the entire city center? Just try to imagine that for a second. You're just going about your day, and suddenly the very ground underneath your feet starts to shake. That's exactly how one witness, Margot Schrovers, described that moment. It's an incredible way to understand the sheer force of the explosion that just tore through the city. So, to set the scene for you, this all went down at 3:30 in the afternoon. We're talking about Utrecht, a city famous for its beautiful canals and ancient buildings. This is a time of day when the streets are normally full of people. This wasn't some industrial accident on the edge of town. This blast hit right in the heart of a dense residential neighborhood. When emergency services got there, they had one word for it: gigantic. Now, you know that's not a word first responders throw around lightly. That single word tells you everything you need to know about the scale of what they were up against from the moment they arrived. And this wasn't just a single event that was over in a flash. The explosion itself was so powerful that it instantly sparked a massive fire. So for the first responders, this became a double crisis. You have a scene of collapsed buildings that is now also being swallowed by a blaze that would end up raging for hours. So what does a gigantic explosion actually do to the heart of an ancient city? Let's take a look at the immediate aftermath. The scene was just one of absolute devastation. We're not talking about a few broken windows. Several buildings didn't just get damaged. They completely collapsed. The streets were impossible to get through, just choked with rubble and broken glass. And hanging over all of it was this huge, dark plume of smoke that you could see for miles. A terrible signal to the whole city that something awful had happened. Now, the emergency response was incredibly fast, but the challenges they faced were just unbelievable. Firefighters couldn't just rush in. The buildings that were somehow still standing were so unstable from the blast, it was just too dangerous to go inside. They had to fight this massive fire from the outside, all while dealing with the constant threat of another collapse. And that shockwave wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. The mayor of Utrecht, Sharon Dijksma, really spoke for everyone in the city, describing a community that was just deeply shaken. This wasn't just damage to bricks and mortar. It was a real blow to the city's heart. Amidst all of this destruction, the most urgent question, of course, is about the people. What was the human cost? How many were caught in this? The initial number that came out was 4. 4 people injured. Now, given the scale of the destruction we've just seen, that number might seem surprisingly low, but you have to remember, every single one of those people has a story. Okay, let's break that down. 2 people were actually treated right there on the scene. 1 person was taken to the hospital, but thankfully their injuries were minor. And then a 4th person became unwell a bit later, which was likely due to the shock of it all. The really remarkable takeaway here is that despite how massive this blast was, no one was reported to have been seriously injured. But the impact, well, it goes way beyond direct injuries. Just think about all the people who lived on that street. In a single moment, their homes were either gone or just too dangerous to go back to. The city had to move fast, putting up all these displaced residents in a nearby hotel. Their lives just completely turned upside down in an instant. So with the fire finally out and the injured accounted for, the focus makes a big shift. Now it's all about the investigation and 2 really urgent questions. Is anyone else still trapped in all that rubble? And what on earth caused this to happen? And this quote from the mayor, it's really chilling. Even hours after the explosion, when you'd think the immediate danger was over, there was this terrible, lingering uncertainty. Rescuers couldn't safely search the debris, which means they had no idea if they were looking for survivors or if it had become a recovery operation. And that brings us to the central mystery of this whole thing. How does something like this even happen? In a modern city, in the middle of a Thursday afternoon, what could possibly cause an explosion of this size? So this is where it gets interesting. You have a gap between what people are speculating and what's being officially confirmed. The leading theory, the one that makes the most sense to a lot of people, is a gas leak. But officially, the cause is still unknown while they investigate. They have ruled out one thing, though, which is a small but really significant detail. They don't suspect any foul play. So the police have launched a full-scale investigation to get to the bottom of this. But in all of this chaos, there is a real glimmer of hope. Authorities believe that the buildings that were completely destroyed were actually empty when the explosion happened. And if that's true, it is an incredible stroke of luck that prevented a much, much greater tragedy. And that really leaves us with this final thought. Beyond the investigation, beyond the cleanup, there's a much bigger question here. When an event like this tears a hole in a place with so much history and community, how do you even begin to rebuild? Not just the buildings, but that sense of safety, that sense of home. That's the challenge Utrecht is facing right now.